Hello and welcome to Triage, timely conversations for healthcare professionals, a podcast created and produced by K&L Gates. Each episode is designed to highlight important developments in health law and analyze the impact on our clients and friends of the firm. We hope you enjoy this podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's Triage podcast. I'm Richard Church from the K&L Gates healthcare regulatory team based in Chicago in Research Triangle Park. And I'm here this week with another new guest to talk about an interesting area of opportunity for healthcare providers in the renewable energy purchasing space. Our colleague that's with us is Teresa Hill. Teresa is in the Seattle office and works in this area extensively. And so, Teresa, I'm going to let you say a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. So my name is Teresa Hill, partner in the Seattle office. I have a transactional energy practice that focuses specifically on our purchase agreements from renewable energy facilities. So been doing this practice for about 15 years. Before that, more focused on environmental stuff. But for the past 8 years, about half of the time that I've done the renewable energy practice, the focus has really been on these power purchase agreements between companies that are trying to procure renewable energy to meet their sustainability goals and the developers of those projects.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. And, as we have worked with clients and as you've seen in the broader industry, there's obviously a real drive towards sustainability in a lot of companies that want to be on the forefront of addressing climate change and environmental impacts more broadly. Certainly for healthcare companies, we see a particular focus in that area. As you and I have talked, social determinants of health is a real driver and focus right now in the healthcare industry of looking at how environmental factors more broadly, whether it's food insecurity or housing insecurity or environmental quality issues, really drive negative health outcomes. And so as healthcare providers shift into a world where they're both wanting to see their patients have better health outcomes, but are also financially on the hook for value-based care arrangements, which really reward keeping folks healthier. This is a natural area of importance for healthcare providers to try to be part of the solution from an energy and a clean energy perspective. So I thought it would be helpful to start to just talk about how these renewable energy purchase deals work more broadly, because some of our listeners may not have had any exposure or dealt with one of these deals at the level of detail that you deal with every day.
I think it's good to go back to the history of this just a little bit, in the sense that quite a long time companies have been, understanding, I guess, that link between climate and health and the health of their clients, their customers, their businesses, right, and how they're impacted by potential climate change. And so, the first sort of companies to transact in this area would purchase what we called unbundled renewable energy credits. And those renewable energy credits are the certificates based on each megawatt hour of generation of renewable energy that allows you to make that green claim, right? So when you see a company say, we use renewable energy, the basis of that claim is that renewable energy credit. And so historically, companies purchased unbundled renewable energy credits, which meant they just went out on these exchanges and they purchased renewable energy credits that were not being used by other, off-takers of the energy, and they could make those claims. And it was really a valid way to, make those first claims. But it's been about 8 to 10 years ago, the first companies really who wanted to make more of an impact started looking at structural ways to make these purchases more impactful by bundling their purchase, right? And so they were looking at opportunities to, can I buy wind energy or solar energy directly from a project. And so I have more of a material impact on the environment within which my business is operating. And they found it was difficult, right? So there are opportunities to do those, what we would call physical purchases, where you identify a wind or solar project that's near one of your campuses, right? And you buy energy that way, or you buy it through your utility. But we also found that because of the patchwork of regulation, companies that have distributed loads, various reasons, different structures were needed. And so a lot of the transactions that you see are under a structure that we call a virtual power purchase agreement, which is really a financial arrangement where the buyer, the off-taker of the renewable energy credits, pays a fixed price and settles on that fixed price against the floating price in the market and receives the renewable energy credits. And it's a complicated structure, but in essence, it provides that renewable energy facility a guaranteed revenue stream for the life of the contract, which are usually 10 to 15 years. And it allows them to be financed and built, right? And so when you go out and make these claims, you're not only buying these renewable energy credits, you're able to say, I'm really changing the grid mix for my clients, for my customers, for my employees, in the areas where we operate, because we are bringing new renewable resources onto the grid. And so that's the most common structure that you see right now are these virtual power purchase agreements.
That's very interesting and very helpful, and really helpful to kind of hear the evolution of that, because I think probably folks did have a lot of exposure historically to just purchasing the credits, but understanding the impact that these projects can have if they're really done at the direct purchasing level is important. In that regard, I'd be interested to hear you talk further about, I know some of the more recent deals have focused, sort of not only on those social determinants of health, but also on social justice issues in really looking at then leveraging the project to not only address climate and energy type issues, but also social justice issues and equity issues about where these projects are placed and who really benefits from them, which is a way to kind of almost double the benefit of the project itself. So can you share more about some of these more recent deals in the market that are noteworthy?
Yeah, I think over the past year, we've really seen that focus narrow in on the environmental and energy justice issues that are aspects of these deals. So again, you think about an evolution, right, from renewable energy credits to these bundled projects to looking forward, how can a company have even more impact, and how can you address these environmental and energy justice issues that are impacting the communities that you operate in. And so you see, I think the most recent and best example of this is a deal that was announced by Microsoft and Soul Systems last summer, where it's really a portfolio of 500 megawatts of solar projects in this portfolio, where Microsoft will be the off-taker in these physical and financial structures that we talked about and receiving the renewable energy credits. But the interesting piece of that is that a portion of the proceeds from the transaction from both parties are being funneled into a community investment fund. And that community investment fund, in turn goes back into the communities where these projects are located. And it also, the portfolio itself is structured to maximize the environmental, community, societal impacts of these projects, right? And so, focus, for example, on trying to locate these projects in underserved communities, trying to make sure that the environmental stewardship elements of this are at the forefront of the, sort of siting process. There's a lot of elements of it, but I think it just drills down further on those environmental and energy justice issues that I think have always been a part of these deals for companies. But again, the focus on them has been much, much clearer over the last year.
Yeah. And again, I think that's an area where we see in the healthcare space, this is a real area of focus this year coming out of last year's events and really beginning to think about equity in the healthcare space. So, tremendous seems to me potential to think about both driving health outcomes, but also driving investment in ways that were meaningful for healthcare clients who are key players in every community that they're located. And specifically to the healthcare space, can you talk more about where these deals have been done in the healthcare provider world? And again, any thoughts you have on opportunities there?
Yeah, it's interesting when you look again back at the history here, when you saw that transition from the unbundled renewable energy credits to these more impactful sort of bundled purchasing structures. The first movers in that space were really the tech companies, right? Google has always been out front on these issues, with the rest of the tech community following closely. In 2014, though, you saw Kaiser Permanente do one of these deals. And so they were really one of the first movers in this space, which even at the time I found very fascinating. And the link to me seemed clear at the time, right? That intersection between climate and health. And so they have a deal that they were fortunate enough to share the structure of that deal with the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, which is this great organization that has a lot of materials available for any of our clients that are interested in learning more about these structures. But they have a case study online about that Kaiser deal. And so really there's a ton of information about it. But essentially it's a solar purchase and a wind purchase out of projects that were built in California, and they take the renewable energy credits. They structured it a little bit differently than you would see it structured now, because I think, again, as a first mover, they were trying to figure out, how do you get these deals done? But it's essentially a financial fixed for floating swap in the same way that I described. But to me, it was really fascinating to see them move in the area and continue to make a lot of strides in this area. And when you look up, their case study and sort of their press releases on it, to your point, they talk very specifically about how, devastating wildfires and droughts and other things that are, environmental impacts on people's lives can be mitigated by taking action in areas that are affecting climate change, like purchasing renewable energy. So, they just very clearly make that link between climate and health.
Yeah, that's, again, really helpful and appreciate you walking us through that deal and helpful, obviously, that Kaiser made that sort of publicly available for the broader community to see how that deal was put together. Well, I'm sensitive to the fact that we're up against time in terms of our conversation. So I think with that, we'll wrap it up. But I do just want to thank you, Teresa. We think this is a really exciting area for healthcare providers that dovetails with so many strategic initiatives within the healthcare space. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the opportunities and the structure of these transactions for our clients.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for talking to me today.
And thank you to all of our listeners. And we'll look forward to following up in the weeks to come with additional Triage episodes. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks again for listening to Triage, timely conversations for healthcare professionals. New episodes are available for download through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. By subscribing to Triage, you will receive timely notifications for each new episode. Also, if you have any topics you would like to hear discussed on Triage, please don't hesitate to email triagesupport@klgates.com. We would love to hear from you.